perhaps the most wonderful man in the world, Charlie Blair, one of the great pioneer.
Maureen O'Hara was the kind of presence that altered the physical environment the moment she entered a frame, not because she demanded attention, but because the camera, the lights, and even the surrounding space seemed to recalibrate themselves around her. In the Technicolor era, when studios were still learning how color could overwhelm or betray the human face, her blazing red hair, pale skin, and piercing blue eyes absorbed light rather than reflecting it, giving cinematographers a subject who did not flatten under saturation but instead deepened it. Hollywood needed faces like hers to justify the enormous expense of color film, and for a time, she became the embodiment of what Technicolor promised audiences. Intensity without fragility, beauty without softness, presence without submission. On screen, Maureen O'Hara did not orbit male protagonists or exist as a narrative reward. She stood directly inside the story's engine, shoulder to shoulder with men whose authority was rarely questioned, matching them not through imitation but through a steadiness that felt innate. Yet, the image audiences consumed was only the surface permitted by the lights. Beneath it existed a woman shaped long before Hollywood by a childhood defined not by indulgence or fantasy, but by discipline, repetition, and restraint. Born on August 17, 1920, in Ray, a southern suburb of Dublin, Maureen was the second of 6 children in a household where order mattered more than expression and endurance was valued above recognition. Her father, Charles Fitzsimons, ran a sporting goods business and later became deeply involved in Irish football administration, including ties to Shamrock Rovers, and he believed in sport not as entertainment but as a system of training, where resilience, timing, and stamina outweighed applause. Her mother, Marguerite Fitzsimons, was classically trained in operatic singing, and while music filled the house, it was never treated as performance for praise. It was practice, scheduled daily, governed by precision and repetition, and always oriented toward mastery rather than display. All 6 children were introduced early to the arts, not because the family imagined stardom, but because artistic training was considered fundamental to discipline of the body and mind. Several of Maureen's siblings went on to careers in performance, including Margot, Charles, and James, while the eldest sister, Peggy, chose a religious life and stepped away from the arts entirely, reinforcing the sense that creative paths were not exalted above others but simply one option among many forms of work. In the Fitzsimons household, talent was not celebrated prematurely, and choosing an artistic life was never framed as exceptional. It was treated with the same seriousness as any profession, stripped of glamour and tied directly to effort. From the age of 6, Maureen studied dance and drama in an environment that emphasized correctness over expression, repetition over exploration, and control over release. Training was rigorous and impersonal, designed to eliminate error rather than cultivate personality. And by the time she began appearing on stage at 14 with local theater groups, performance felt less like discovery and more like the natural extension of a system she had already internalized. Standing before an audience did not produce thrill or fear. It resembled stepping into a scheduled obligation with clearly defined expectations, where mistakes were neither excused nor dramatized. Acceptance into the Abbey Theatre introduced stricter demands but no conceptual shift, as the culture there reinforced the idea that roles were earned through stamina, memory, and discipline rather than charisma or favoritism. Alongside her artistic training, her father insisted she learn typing and bookkeeping, not as a fallback plan, but as protection against dependence on a profession he understood to be unstable, a lesson imparted not through lectures but through expectation. Her teenage years followed a relentless rhythm of school during the day and performance or training at night, leaving little space for self-mythology or reflection, only the habit of completing what was required without waiting for validation. When she left Ireland for London in the late 1930s, she entered film studios not as someone seeking transformation, but as a stage-trained worker testing a new environment, where early screen tests and small roles revealed cinema to be emotionally neutral, technically precise, and indifferent to the performer's inner life. The camera offered no feedback, no affirmation, and no sense of communion, and film initially existed for her as a professional option rather than a calling. That changed when Charles Lawton noticed her, not because she conformed to prevailing beauty standards, but because of the physical steadiness and internal control that came from years of stage discipline, qualities difficult to quantify but immediately apparent. Signing her to a 7-year contract marked a decisive shift, and with it came the replacement of the name Fitzsimons with O'Hara, a subtle administrative change that nevertheless represented the first time her personal identity was adjusted to fit market logic. Cinema did not merely require her labor, it required a name that could be positioned. Jamaica Inn in 1939 introduced her to film audiences in a modest role, but the experience demanded a recalibration of instinct, as every expression had to be restrained, every emotional impulse delayed until the camera was ready, and the timing of reaction became as critical as the reaction itself. That same year, The Hunchback of Notre Dame elevated her visibility dramatically, placing her as Esmeralda between the spectacle of Technicolor and the gravity of tragic narrative, and the film's success, both commercially and critically, shifted her irrevocably into the studio system's long-term planning. RKO Radio Pictures purchased her contract, and from that point forward, she ceased to be a stage actress experimenting with film and became an image under construction, Hollywood's emerging Technicolor face. As opportunities multiplied and lights grew brighter, the balance shifted subtly but decisively from performance to image, from personal discipline to star management, creating a tension that would define her relationship with the system for decades, one in which she remained highly visible yet emotionally and structurally distant. How Green Was My Valley in 1941 showcased a different dimension of her work, situating her within a narrative of memory, restraint, and communal obligation under John Ford's severe direction, which eliminated excess and demanded emotional compression so precise that a single misjudged movement could invalidate a take. Though the film won multiple Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, and became a touchstone of American cinema, Maureen O'Hara received no individual nomination, even as her character remained central to the film's emotional architecture through what was withheld rather than expressed. As Technicolor productions intensified, the physical demands placed on her increased, requiring sustained endurance under harsh conditions where fatigue was hidden but ever present, and the brilliance audiences admired was achieved only after the body had already been pushed to its limits. Pirate films and action-heavy roles such as The Spanish Main and Sinbad the Sailor further solidified her image as a strong woman not through declaration but necessity, as the roles themselves would collapse without genuine physical competence and stamina. By the late 1940s, when she stood at the height of her professional power, an off-screen incident exposed the fragility of safety for women within the studio system. According to her later memoir, she was sexually assaulted by a powerful producer during a meeting framed as professional, and when she reported the incident, the response did not center on accountability but on public doubt, with tabloids questioning her motives and character rather than investigating the act. The resulting scandal did not destroy her career outright, but introduced a calculated deceleration, where projects quietly disappeared and her seamless integration into the system was disrupted without formal explanation. Decades later, her story would be recognized as one that occurred too early, before language and structures existed to protect women who spoke out. Despite this, her on-screen work in the early 1950s continued to reflect an operational equality rare for its time, as seen in Against All Flags, where she functioned as a true counterforce within the action rather than a protected figure. The title queen of Technicolor emerged as shorthand for her visual impact, but it obscured the labor behind the image, the constant exposure, physical precision, and narrow margins for error demanded by color filmmaking. During these years, she also turned down roles that perpetuated stereotypes, particularly of Irish women, decisions that earned her a reputation as difficult within a system that prized compliance, and her willingness to confront studios over contracts further narrowed her access to safe roles. Collaborations with John Ford and John Wayne provided stability and box office success. Yet even the widely celebrated chemistry between O'Hara and Wayne remained rooted in mutual respect rather than romantic transgression, a rarity in Hollywood mythology. The Quiet Man, filmed in Ireland, represented both a professional and personal convergence, and despite suffering a broken hand during production that did not halt filming, the film became one of the most enduring works of her career. Afterward, she declined to remain locked into a trajectory that no longer allowed movement, and though The Parent Trap reintroduced her to a new generation, it did not mark a return to centrality. Instead, her presence gradually dispersed across television, music, and cultural preservation, spaces that allowed work without symbolic burden. Her private life unfolded alongside this professional arc, marked by early marriages that revealed the limits of endurance when love becomes control, and later by a partnership with Charles Blair that offered coexistence without diminishment until his sudden death forced her into responsibility rather than retreat. In her later years, she chose quiet over retrospection, routine over recognition, and when she passed away on October 24, 2015, at the age of 95, her life closed without spectacle, leaving behind not a legend to be defended, but a standard that had already been absorbed into the structure of cinema itself, where women could exist as integral components of narrative machinery rather than exceptions requiring explanation, and where strength did not need to be justified by trauma or softened by apology, only practiced consistently, day after day, until the work no longer required light to prove it had been done.